When my wife collapsed in our garden last spring, I thought I was losing her to a stroke. The doctors thought the same thing. Then my wife passed away. But 1 week after we buried her doctor called me with a message that shattered everything. "Sir, there's something wrong with the test results. Come alone. Don't bring your daughter or your son-in-law. Your life depends on it." When I walked into that office and received the test results, I was shocked into silence. "Hey everyone, welcome. I'm grateful you're here. Where are you joining me from today? Drop your location in the comments below." Quick note: this is a fictional story crafted for reflection and entertainment. While the events aren't real, the themes carry meaning I hope resonates with you. Let's continue. When my wife collapsed in our garden last spring, I thought I was losing her to a stroke. The doctors thought the same thing. But 1 week after we buried her physician called me with a message that would shatter everything. "Mr. Porter," Dr. Charles Brennan said, his voice tight, "I need you to come to my office, immediately. There's something in Dorothy's blood work that doesn't make sense." He paused. The silence stretched. "Don't bring your daughter. Don't bring her husband. Come alone. Your life may depend on it." I sat in my truck staring at my phone. Your life may depend on it. Dorothy was already gone. What else could hurt me now I was wrong? Let me start at the beginning. My name is Eugene Porter. I'm 58 years old. I spent 25 years as a construction manager in Richmond, Virginia, overseeing projects that still stand across this city. Before that, I gave 20 years to the Air Force in base construction and engineering. I know how to read blueprints. I know how to spot structural weaknesses before a building collapses. But I couldn't see the cracks in my own family. Dorothy was my compass for 37 years. We married when I was 21 and she was 19. She was small, maybe 5'3", but she had a spine made of steel and a laugh that could fill any room. She worked as a personal accountant for Judge Harrison Caldwell, one of the wealthiest men in Richmond. For 15 years, she managed his investments, his properties, his foundations. She knew where every dollar went. She was good at numbers, better than good. She kept our household running like clockwork, saved enough for us to retire comfortably. I trusted her with everything. I failed her. Last spring arrived brutal and beautiful. The azaleas Dorothy had planted along our walkway were just beginning to bloom. White ones. She said they reminded her of wedding dresses of hope. It was a Wednesday morning in early April. Dorothy was at the kitchen table with her coffee reading something on her laptop. She looked tired. She'd been looking tired for months. "Morning, honey," I said, kissing her head. Her hair smelled like lavender. "Morning," she replied without looking up. "Is you feeling okay?" "I'm fine, just tired. I didn't sleep well." She hadn't been sleeping well for a while. When I asked about it, she said her mind wouldn't shut off. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? I left for work around 6:30. That was the last time I saw my wife conscious. The call came at 11:47 a.m. I was on site when my phone rang. "Mr. Porter, this is Richmond General Hospital. Your wife was brought in by ambulance. You need to come now." When I got to the emergency room, they took me to a small consultation room. White walls, uncomfortable chairs, a box of tissues on the table. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Porter. Your wife suffered a massive stroke. By the time the paramedics arrived, there was significant brain damage. She never regained consciousness." Dorothy was 56 years old. She didn't smoke. She barely drank. She walked 3 miles every morning. "Did she have a history of high blood pressure?" the doctor asked. "Yes. She was on medication for it. Digoxin." The doctor nodded, made a note, expressed condolences. I sat in that room alone for a long time. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a woman was crying. I wanted to cry too, but the tears wouldn't come. I just felt hollow. Stephanie arrived an hour later with her husband, Trevor. I had to tell my daughter that her mother was dead. I had to watch her face crumple, had to catch her when her knees gave out. Trevor didn't cry. He stood behind Stephanie with his hand on her shoulder, his face unreadable. He smelled like expensive cologne. He wore a Rolex that caught the light. He kept checking it like he had somewhere else to be. I didn't like Trevor. I never had. But Dorothy loved Stephanie, and Stephanie loved Trevor, so we tolerated him. Dorothy saw through him from the beginning. That man has a calculator where his heart should be, she told me once. Stephanie will figure it out eventually. She never did. The next 3 days were a fog, choosing a casket, picking flowers, writing an obituary. Pastor Matthew Collins from St. Paul's Episcopal Church stopped by to discuss the service. Church ladies brought casseroles and sympathy cards. Gerald Thompson, my best friend since our Air Force days, practically moved into the guest room. He made sure I ate, made sure I slept, made sure I didn't do anything stupid. I moved through those days like a ghost. I signed papers, I shook hands, I accepted condolences, but I wasn't really there. Part of me had passed away in that garden with Dorothy. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday morning at Hollywood Cemetery under the oak trees, where 5 generations of Dorothy's family rested. She'd picked out the plot years ago right next to her mother. She was practical like that. She planned everything except being murdered. But I didn't know that yet. On Friday night, I sat alone in our bedroom on Monument Avenue, holding one of Dorothy's sweaters, breathing in the faint scent of her perfume. I thought the worst pain of my life was over. I thought burying my wife would be the hardest thing I'd ever have to do. The morning we buried Dorothy, the Virginia heat was already brutal by 9 a.m. Spring in Richmond heat meant temperatures that climbed into the 80s before noon, humidity thick enough to choke on. I stood at the edge of the grave in my black suit, the same one Dorothy had bought me for our 40th anniversary 3 years ago. The fabric felt like sandpaper against my skin. Hollywood Cemetery sprawled across the hills, overlooking the James River, a place where the wealthy and prominent of Richmond had been buried for over 150 years. Ancient oak trees provided patches of shade, their branches draped with Spanish moss that swayed in the slight breeze. Dorothy's family had plots here going back 5 generations. She'd picked out her spot 2 decades ago, right next to her mother, under a massive oak that had to be 300 years old. The casket gleamed white in the morning sun. White roses covered the lid. Her favorite. I'd made sure of that. White roses for the woman who'd planted white azaleas along our walkway. White for hope, she'd said. White for new beginnings. There were about 40 people gathered around the grave. Neighbors from Monument Avenue, friends from church. Judge Harrison Caldwell stood in the back, his face grave. Some of Dorothy's colleagues from the accounting firm she'd worked with before taking the position with the judge. My buddy Gerald Thompson stood beside me, solid and silent, a hand on my shoulder. Pastor Matthew Collins from St. Paul's Episcopal Church stood at the head of the casket, his prayer book open. He was a good man, had baptized Stephanie 36 years ago, had counseled Dorothy and me through some rough patches early in our marriage. "Ah, the Lord is my shepherd." He began, his voice steady and strong. "I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures." I'd heard the 23rd Psalm at a dozen funerals. It had never meant much to me before. But standing there watching them lower my wife into the ground, the words felt different. Personal. Raw. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." I wasn't so sure about that part. I was pretty sure I was going to fear everything now. The sound of expensive shoes on gravel made several heads turn. I didn't need to look. I recognized the rhythm of those footsteps, the particular way Trevor Coleman walked, like he owned every space he entered. Stephanie and Trevor arrived 15 minutes late. My daughter wore a black dress that probably cost more than I made in a week. Dark sunglasses covered half her face despite the shade from the oak trees. She carried a designer purse, the kind with a logo that screamed money. Her heels sank into the soft earth with each step. Trevor wore a tailored black suit, crisp white shirt, black tie. But it was the accessories that caught my attention. The Rolex on his wrist caught the sunlight and threw little sparks across the mourners. That cologne, thick and cloying, reached me even from 20 feet away. It was the kind of scent that cost more than my truck payment. They slid into the space beside me without a word. Stephanie didn't touch my arm, didn't squeeze my hand, didn't acknowledge me at all. She just stood there, face hidden behind those oversized sunglasses, while Trevor checked his watch. Once, twice, 3 times in the span of 2 minutes. I glanced at him. His jaw was tight. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the shade. His eyes kept darting around the gathering like he was looking for someone, or maybe looking for an exit. Pastor Collins continued reading. I tried to focus on the words on the ceremony on saying goodbye to the woman I'd loved for 37 years. But I kept getting distracted by the man standing next to me, by the way he kept checking that damn watch, by the way my daughter wouldn't even look at the casket where her mother lay. When the service ended, we moved to the fellowship hall at St. Paul's Church. The building was only 10 minutes from the cemetery, a beautiful old structure with stained glass windows and white columns. The fellowship hall was in the basement, a large room with folding tables and metal chairs. The ladies' auxiliary had outdone themselves. Long tables covered with white tablecloths held enough food to feed an army. Fried chicken still warm from the fryer. Collard greens cooked with ham hocks. Macaroni and cheese in casserole dishes. Cornbread cut into perfect squares. Green bean casserole. Sweet potato pie. Pound cake. Sweet tea in giant dispensers. The smells of my childhood. The tastes of comfort. Food that said home, that said family, that said the South. But my stomach was a knot of grief and something else. Something I couldn't name yet. Something that made the food smell wrong, made the chatter of voices feel too loud, made the fluorescent lights seem too bright. I sat in a folding chair in the corner, accepting condolences. Mrs. Henderson from next door squeezed my hand. She was a good woman, Eugene. The best. Mr. Carlson from down the street nodded. Anything you need, you call. Judge Caldwell bent down his voice low. Dorothy was irreplaceable. If there's anything I can do. I nodded, shook hands, said thank you over and over until the words lost meaning. My hearing aids were turned up high. Most people assumed I was half deaf, which was fine by me. The truth was, I could control the volume, turn it up to catch conversations across a room, turn it down when I needed quiet. Right now, I had them cranked up all the way. That's how I heard the conversation happening near the punch bowl, maybe 15 feet away. Trevor and Stephanie stood with their backs to me, their heads close together. To anyone watching, they might have looked like a grieving daughter and her supportive husband sharing a private moment. But I could hear every word. So when can we get into the house? Trevor's voice was low, urgent. Not yet, Stephanie hissed back. We have to wait until the reading of the will. When's that? Dr. Patterson said next week. The lawyer's going to... Next week. Trevor grabbed her elbow, his fingers digging into her arm hard enough to make her wince. I saw it even from across the room. I don't have until next week. Dominic called again this morning. He's not patient, Stephanie. He doesn't do payment plans. Lower your voice, she snapped, pulling her arm free. People are looking. I turned my head slowly, pretending to admire a flower arrangement that someone had set on the table beside me. But I kept my ears focused on that conversation. on those urgent whispers that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with money. Through my peripheral vision, I watched them. Trevor's face was flushed red, creeping up from his collar. Sweat had soaked through his shirt under the arms. His hands kept clenching and unclenching. Stephanie's jaw was tight, her fingers white-knuckled around a plastic cup of sweet tea. I'd seen that look before. I'd seen it on the faces of men in Vietnam who were surrounded with no way out. It was the look of desperation. It was the look of people who'd run out of options. The fellowship hall began to empty. People came to shake my hand one last time to tell me Dorothy was in a better place. I nodded. Thanked them. Let them believe I was just a grieving old man who couldn't hear half of what they said. But I heard everything. And I was starting to understand that something was very, very wrong. I moved slowly across the fellowship hall, using my cane more than I needed to. People expected an old man to move slowly at his wife's funeral. They expected grief to weigh him down. What they didn't expect was that old man to be listening to every word. There was a flower arrangement near the punch bowl, white lilies and roses. I made my way toward it, stopping to accept handshakes, another, "I'm so sorry for your loss." But my hearing aids were turned up all the way, and my focus was entirely on the two people standing with their backs to me, hunched together like conspirators. "I'm serious, Stephanie," Trevor hissed. "Dominic called me at 6 this morning. You know what that means." "I know." Stephanie's voice was tight. "But the will reading is next Thursday. I can't access anything until then." "Thursday. That's 10 days away. The deadline is Friday. This Friday. 5 days from now." I reached the flowers, bent down as if examining the card, kept my face turned away. "How much does he want?" Stephanie asked. "All of it, $560,000. By 5 p.m. Friday." $560,000. That wasn't mortgage debt. That was gambling trouble, the kind that broke men. And if you don't pay, he was very clear. Trevor's hand went to his ribs, a quick, unconscious gesture. Dominic doesn't make threats he won't follow through on. His people already reminded me. So Trevor had been roughed up. That explained the careful way he'd been moving. "But the house," Stephanie said. "Mom's half is worth at least $300,000. And her life insurance through Judge Caldwell's office, that's $2.5 million. We can't touch any of it until probate." Trevor cut her off. "Which takes months. Dominic doesn't wait months." "There's the safe," Stephanie said. "Mom kept cash in the house. An emergency fund. At least 20 or 30,000. Where? I don't know, but Dad might." I could feel them looking in my direction. I kept my face toward the flowers, shoulders hunched. "He's useless right now," Trevor said, dismissive. "Look at him. He can barely stand." "He's my father," Stephanie said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "He's in the way." Trevor's voice went cold. "But maybe we can use that. Power of attorney. We access the accounts, liquidate what we can. It won't be enough, but it'll buy us time." "He won't sign. He's stubborn." "Everyone signs eventually. You just have to find the right leverage." I'd heard enough. I straightened, slowly picked up the flower arrangement and turned toward them. Their faces changed instantly. Trevor's expression smoothed into sympathy. Stephanie wiped at her eyes like she'd been crying. "Dad," Stephanie said, her voice catching. She reached out, but I stepped past her, setting the flowers down. "Stephanie." "Trevor." I kept my voice flat. "Thank you for coming." "Of course," Stephanie said. She was my mother. Was. Past tense. 3 days dead, and already she was talking about life insurance and house values. "We were just talking about practical matters," Trevor said, moving closer. His hand landed on my shoulder. "Your wife managed all the finances, didn't she? You probably don't even know what accounts you have. We want to help. Take that burden off your shoulders." I looked at him. Really looked. At the expensive watch. At the $3,000 suit. At the sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. This was a desperate man. A dangerous man. "Wow, that's kind of you," I said slowly. "But I'll manage." "Dad, you don't have to do this alone," Stephanie said, moving to my other side. Suddenly I was flanked by both of them, boxed in. "Mom would want us to help you." Would she? Would the woman who'd managed Judge Caldwell's accounts for 15 years want her daughter and son-in-law getting their hands on everything we'd built? "I appreciate the concern, but I need to go home." "Let us drive you," Trevor offered. "I have my truck." "You shouldn't be driving. You're in shock." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. Some people turned to look. "I need to be alone." I turned and walked toward the exit, moving faster than I had all day. My cane clicked against the linoleum. Behind me, I could hear them talking, their voices rising before someone shushed them. The parking lot was half empty now. I climbed into my 1995 Ford F-150 and sat there for a moment. My hands were shaking. Not from grief, from rage, from the crystal-clear understanding that my daughter and her husband weren't here to mourn. They were here to scavenge. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out. The screen was cracked, but I could read the name. Dr. Charles Brennan. I almost didn't answer. I just buried my wife and discovered my daughter was circling like a vulture, but something in my gut said answer. That same instinct that had kept me alive in Vietnam was screaming at me to answer that phone. I pressed the green button. "Eugene." "Doctor." Brennan's voice was different now. This wasn't a condolence call. "We need to talk. Not on the phone. Can you come to my office now?" "Now I just left my wife's funeral." "I know, I'm sorry. But I just got the lab results back. The full toxicology panel." My blood went cold. "And..." He paused. I could hear him breathing, could hear the tension in that breath. "Dorothy didn't die from a stroke, Eugene. Someone poisoned her. And based on what I'm seeing, it had to be someone close to her. Someone who had regular access to her food and medication." The parking lot spun around me. I gripped the steering wheel. "I'm on my way." I hung up, started the truck. And as I pulled out of the parking lot, I looked in my rearview mirror. Trevor and Stephanie were standing at the church entrance, watching me leave. I climbed into my truck, gripping the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. Dr. Charles Brennan's name lit up the screen. His message was 2 sentences. "Eugene, come to my office immediately. Your life may depend on it." I drove across Richmond with the windows down, letting the hot Virginia air blast against my face. I needed to feel something real. Someone poisoned her. The words kept repeating. Someone poisoned Dorothy. Someone close to her. The medical building was on the east side of town, a small brick structure near the hospitals. I parked in the handicapped spot, my veteran plates giving me the right. The waiting room was empty. The receptionist's desk was dark. No one here except me and whatever waited behind the door marked private. I pushed through without knocking. Dr. Charles Brennan sat at his desk, but he wasn't alone. A man stood by the window silhouette, sharp against the afternoon sun. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a gray suit. His face was weathered with deep lines around his eyes. "Eugene, doctor," Brennan said, standing. His hands were trembling. In 15 years, I'd never seen Charles Brennan's hands shake. This is Detective Christopher Blake, Major Crimes Unit. Major Crimes. The detective turned to face me. His eyes were gunmetal gray cold, but not unkind. Professional. Mr. Porter, he said, extending his hand. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm even more sorry for what I'm about to tell you. I shook his hand. Tell me. Dr. Brennan pushed a folder across the desk. Pages of medical jargon charts, numbers, but one word jumped out, circled in red. Digoxin. Dorothy was on digoxin, I said. You prescribed it. I did, Dr. Brennan said. 2 years ago, for her high blood pressure. It's a cardiac glycoside, a heart medication that helps regulate heart rhythm and lower blood pressure. Very common. Very safe when taken properly. He pulled out another sheet. I prescribed 0.25 milligrams, once daily. That's the standard maintenance dose. So, what's the problem? Detective Blake stepped forward. He pointed to the toxicology report. This number here, this is the therapeutic range for digoxin in the bloodstream. 0.5 to 2 nanograms per milliliter. That's the safe zone. The effective zone. He tapped another number circled in red. And this is what was in Dorothy's blood when she passed away. 8.3, I read. 8.3 nanograms per milliliter, Blake said. 4 to 5 times higher than therapeutic levels. At those concentrations, digoxin becomes a poison. The room felt cold despite the Virginia heat outside. That's enough to... Yes, doctor, Brennan said quietly. At those levels, digoxin causes severe cardiac arrhythmias. The heart loses its ability to pump effectively. But before that happens, it mimics other conditions. Confusion, nausea, extreme fatigue, slurred speech, loss of coordination. I thought about the last 6 months. Dorothy stumbling in the kitchen, grabbing the counter for support, not remembering what day it was, complaining about a bitter taste in her mouth. I'd blamed it on age, on stress. The symptoms were intermittent, I said slowly, because she wasn't given one massive dose, Blake said. Someone was poisoning her slowly, a little at a time, sustained over months, meant to look like natural decline, like a stroke. How long? Based on medical records, Dorothy started complaining about confusion and weakness in February, Dr. Brennan said. She came in 3 times between then and April. I ran standard tests: blood pressure, cholesterol, glucose. Everything looked normal, except her digoxin levels were slightly elevated, but not dangerously so. I attributed it to her body adjusting to the medication. You didn't suspect poisoning? No. His voice broke. I should have. But the symptoms were consistent with hypertension, stress, age. I prescribed a mild sedative, told her to rest more, to drink tea instead of coffee. He put his head in his hands. I told her to drink more tea. Digoxin poisoning is extremely difficult to diagnose, Blake said. The symptoms overlap with dozens of other conditions. High blood pressure, anxiety, early dementia. It's why digoxin has been used as a murder weapon for over 200 years. It hides in plain sight. Murder weapon. The words hit like a physical blow. Who? I asked. Blake looked at Dr. Brennan. Neither wanted to say it. Eugene, Dr. Brennan said carefully. Dorothy came to see me a month before she lost, March 20th. Not about her health, about something else. She was worried about money, discrepancies in her personal accounts, large withdrawals she didn't authorize. My blood went cold. How much? Over 2 years, nearly $500,000, had been withdrawn or transferred from her accounts. Some from your joint savings, most from her personal investment account, the inheritance from her father. 500,000. She traced the transactions. The authorization forms had her signature on them, but Dorothy knew her own signature. These were forgeries. Who? Dr. Brennan's hands clenched on the desk. She recognized the handwriting. It was Stephanie's. The room tilted. I grabbed the desk edge. No, Stephanie wouldn't. Dorothy was gathering evidence, Dr. Brennan said gently. Bank statements, copies of the forged documents. She contacted Judge Harrison Caldwell 3 weeks before she lost. She was planning to press criminal charges, embezzlement, fraud, forgery. But someone found out, Blake said. Didn't they? I stared at the toxicology report. At the numbers in red. Digoxin, 8.3, 4 to 5 times the therapeutic dose. The life insurance policy through Judge Caldwell's office lists you as primary beneficiary. Blake continued. $2.5 million. But Stephanie is listed as secondary beneficiary. If you were to pass away or be declared legally incompetent, she inherits everything. The house, the savings, the insurance money. $2.5 million. That's enough to pay off any debt, Blake said quietly. Enough to disappear and start over. I thought about the funeral. Trevor checking his Rolex. Stephanie on her phone. The whispered conversation near the punch bowl. $560,000. By Friday. Trevor has gambling debts, I said. My voice sounded distant. I overheard them at the church after the funeral. $560,000 owed to someone named Dominic. They need it by Friday or I stopped. They need to access Dorothy's accounts. They want me to sign a power of attorney. Blake's eyes sharpened. What else did you hear? That I'm confused. That I'm in the way. That they need to move quickly. Blake and Brennan exchanged a long look. Mr. Porter, Blake said carefully. Do you feel safe in your home right now? I thought about Trevor's hands. Large. Strong. The way he'd positioned himself between me and the door at the fellowship hall. About Stephanie's cold calculation when she thought I wasn't watching. No, I admitted. Detective Blake reached into his jacket and pulled out a small evidence bag. Inside was something that looked like a voice recorder, barely bigger than a lighter. Mr. Porter, he said quietly, his voice heavy with something between sympathy and steel. We need to talk about your daughter. Detective Blake spread the pharmacy receipts across Dr. Brennan's desk, like a poker hand revealing a killer's tell. CVS Pharmacy on West Broad Street. Walgreens on Patterson Avenue. Rite Aid in Henrico County. His finger moved from receipt to receipt. 7 refills of Dorothy's digoxin prescription in 6 months. 3 different pharmacies, all under Stephanie Coleman's name. I stared at the papers. The dates jumped out at me. February, March, April, May. The months Dorothy had been dying. That's not unusual, I said, though my voice sounded hollow even to me. Dorothy had high blood pressure. She needed her medication. Mr. Porter. Blake's tone was patient but firm. Dorothy's primary care physician prescribed 1 refill every 3 months. That's the standard protocol for digoxin maintenance therapy. 4 refills per year, not 7, and certainly not from 3 different pharmacies. Why would someone use 3 different pharmacies? Because, Blake said quietly. A pharmacist might notice if the same person keeps refilling the same prescription too frequently at one location. They might flag it. Ask questions. Call the prescribing physician, but spread across 3 different pharmacies in 3 different neighborhoods, no one notices the pattern. The cold calculation of it hit me like a fist. Doctor. Brennan pulled a leather-bound journal from his desk drawer. His hands still trembled as he opened it. Dorothy kept detailed notes about her symptoms, he said. She was meticulous. When something felt wrong, she documented it. He turned the journal toward me. Dorothy's handwriting, small, precise, engineer perfect, filled the pages. January 12th. Tea tastes bitter today. Stephanie brought chamomile from that shop she likes. February 3rd. Medication has unusual taste. Metallic will mention to Dr. B. March. 18th. Stephanie visits every Sunday now. Always brings tea. Sweet girl, but something feels off. April 2nd. Dizzy again. Stephanie made tea before she left. Slept 14 hours. I couldn't breathe. The office walls seemed to close in. She knew, I whispered. Dorothy knew something was wrong. She suspected, Blake said, but she didn't want to believe it. No mother wants to believe her daughter is capable of harming her. He pulled out another folder. This one was thicker, filled with bank statements and canceled checks. 2 years ago, Dorothy discovered $150,000 missing from your joint savings account. According to Judge Harrison Caldwell, Dorothy's employer, she contacted him about the theft. Blake paused. But she didn't press charges. She told the judge she'd given Stephanie one more chance. She used her own inheritance money to cover the loss. I remembered that conversation. Dorothy had come to me crying. She made a mistake, Eugene. People make mistakes. She promised to pay it back. But Stephanie never paid it back. 18 months ago, Blake continued, $340,000 disappeared, this time from Dorothy's personal investment account of money she'd inherited from her father. Stephanie had power of attorney from the first incident. He tapped the bank statements. Dorothy caught her again. This time she called Judge Caldwell and said she was filing criminal charges. That was 1 year ago this month. The timeline clicked into place with sickening clarity. That's when the poisoning started, I said. We believe so. Small amounts of digoxin added to her food or drink. The levels would have built up gradually in her system. At first, Dorothy would have just felt tired, confused, maybe a little nauseous, symptoms that could be attributed to stress or age. By the time she collapsed in your garden, her blood had 4 to 5 times the normal therapeutic concentration. Dr. Brennan closed the journal, but his finger remained on one entry. I should have listened. She told me the tea tasted wrong. The medication tasted different. I thought... His voice cracked. I thought she was imagining things. Side effects of the digoxin itself, maybe. Or just getting older. I failed her. No, Blake said firmly. Stephanie and Trevor failed her. They planned this. They executed it, and they almost got away with it. Almost. Blake leaned forward. Evidence alone won't convict them, Mr. Porter. A good defense attorney could argue Dorothy was accidentally taking too much medication, that the pharmacy records show Stephanie was just helping her confused mother manage prescriptions. We need a confession. We need them to incriminate themselves on record. My stomach dropped. You want me to wear a wire? A recording device, small, discreet, size of a lighter. He pulled a tiny black box from his jacket pocket. You'd engage them in conversation. Get them talking about the money, about Dorothy, about their plans. They think you're confused, grieving, vulnerable. Use that. 20 years in the Air Force had taught me to assess risk. 2 combat deployments in hostile territory had taught me to keep my head when violence lurked around every corner. But this was different. This was my daughter, my home. "They're dangerous," I said. "They've already taken one life," Blake acknowledged. "That's why I'll have officers monitoring from a surveillance van parked down the street. You'll have a panic signal say, 'Dorothy's azaleas' in any sentence, and we come in immediately. You won't be alone." "What if they search me?" "Find the device." "Then you're a paranoid old man who bought a personal recorder after his wife passed away because you're afraid you're losing your memory. Play confused. Lean into the grief." Blake's eyes held mine. "I know this isn't easy, but they're planning something. The $560,000 debt. The Friday deadline. They need money fast, and you're the obstacle between them and a $2.5 million life insurance policy." I thought about Dorothy's journal, her careful documentation, her hope that she was wrong about our daughter. She'd been right. "When do we do this?" Blake handed me a burner phone along with the recording device. "They'll come to the house, probably tonight or tomorrow. They'll want to pressure you about the power of attorney, about accessing Dorothy's accounts. Let them talk. Let them threaten. Get everything on record." I slipped the device into my shirt pocket. It felt cold against my chest, a small weight that carried the power to destroy what was left of my family. "I spent 20 years in the Air Force," I said. "2 deployments in combat zones. I can handle my own house." "I don't doubt that, Mr. Porter. But remember, this isn't a combat zone. It's a crime scene, and the enemy looks like your family." I drove home as the sun began its descent, painting the Virginia sky in shades of orange and purple. The recording device pressed against my chest, like a second heartbeat. The house on Monument Avenue had never looked so menacing. Somewhere inside those walls, Dorothy had drunk poisoned tea, had felt her body betraying her, had known in her last lucid moments that her daughter was responsible. And now I was going to prove it. I turned onto Monument Avenue as the streetlights flickered on one by one. The recording device pressed cold against my chest with every breath. 3 blocks away from home. 2 blocks. 1. Then I saw it. My front door, Dorothy's blue door with the brass knocker she'd picked out in Williamsburg 20 years ago, stood half open in the fading light. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The truck slowed to a crawl. Every instinct from 20 years in the Air Force screamed at me to call for backup, to not enter alone, to treat this like the hostile situation it clearly was. But Detective Blake's voice echoed in my head. "Let them talk. Get everything on record." I pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. The porch light was off. I always left it on. The evening air felt thick as I climbed out, one hand gripping my cane. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Normal Saturday sounds. Families having dinner. No one watching an old man walk into his own violated home. I pushed the door open wider. The living room stopped me cold. Couch cushions slashed open, white stuffing scattered across the hardwood. Dorothy had refinished herself. Books swept from shelves, her mystery novels, my engineering manuals, the photo albums we'd kept for 37 years. Dorothy's porcelain figurines lay shattered across the coffee table. The shepherdess from Charleston, the bluebirds from Asheville, 3 decades of memories broken. Then I heard it. Metal on metal. The sharp crack of something being pried open. The sound came from down the hall, from our bedroom. I moved slowly, deliberately, letting my cane tap a steady rhythm. My pulse hammered, but my breathing stayed controlled. Assess the threat. Maintain the advantage. They thought I was confused, weak, grieving. Let them keep thinking that. The bedroom door stood wide open. Evening light slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across Dorothy's antique oak dresser. Every drawer hung open, contents dumped on the floor. her jewelry box overturned, photographs scattered like leaves. Trevor knelt in front of the wall, safe behind the dresser, a crowbar jammed into the seam between the door and frame. Sweat darkened his expensive polo shirt. His Rolex caught the dying light as he strained against the lever. Stephanie stood at Dorothy's dresser, rifling through the bottom drawer where we kept important papers. Birth certificates, insurance policies, the deed to the house. They were so focused, they didn't hear my approach. I cleared my throat. Trevor spun around, crowbar raised like a weapon. Stephanie's hand flew to her chest. For 3 long heartbeats, nobody moved. Then Trevor lowered the crowbar and forced a smile. Eugene. Jesus. You scared us. I let myself lean heavily on the cane shoulders, slumping. I thought we were being robbed. No. Trevor crossed the room too quickly, stopping just inside my personal space. The cologne was overwhelming. We're protecting family assets. Dominic's people are watching the house. We needed to secure the cash before they break in. Stephanie stepped forward, voice honey sweet. We tried calling Daddy. You didn't answer. She'd never called me Daddy. Always Dad, or just Eugene when she was angry. We were so worried. I blinked slowly, playing my part. I was at Dr. Brennan's office. Something about Dorothy's blood work. I can't remember what he said. They exchanged a glance. Quick, nervous. We need the safe combination, Trevor said. His tone had shifted, less apologetic, more demanding. Your mother kept $30,000 cash in there. Emergency fund. We need to move it before the creditors come. I don't know the combination. I let my voice crack. Dorothy handled all the finances, the numbers, the accounts. I can't think straight anymore. Everything's so foggy. It wasn't entirely performance. Standing in our bedroom, seeing Dorothy's things scattered like garbage, the grief was real enough. Stephanie touched my arm, her grip firm. Oh, Daddy. Of course you're confused. You've been through so much. She guided me toward the door. Why don't you rest, Trevor, and I will stay tonight. We'll take care of everything. You'll stay. I let hope creep into my voice, made myself sound like a frightened old man who didn't want to be alone. I don't want to be in this house by myself. We're family, Stephanie said softly. Family takes care of each other. Behind her, Trevor was already back at the safe, examining the lock mechanism with professional interest. I'll call a locksmith tomorrow morning. Get this thing open properly. Shaida, I shuffled toward the guest bedroom, cane tapping. There are clean sheets in the linen closet. Dorothy always kept. I let the sentence die, touching the doorframe like I'd forgotten what I meant to say. We'll find them, Stephanie assured me. You just rest now. I closed the guest room door and stood very still in the darkness. Their voices carried through the thin walls. Old house. Original construction from 1892. Every sound traveled. The old man's completely lost it, Stephanie whispered. Did you see his face? He doesn't suspect us. I lay in the darkness of that guest room and listened to my daughter plan to harm me. The house settled around me with familiar sounds. Dorothy used to say old houses talk if you listen. The creak of floorboards, the whisper of pipes, the tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Tonight, my house was telling me I might not see another sunset. I kept my breathing steady, slow, like a man deep in grief, exhausted sleep. The recording device pressed against my ribs under my shirt. Through the thin walls, I heard them moving through the house, opening drawers, testing windows, planning. The bedside clock glowed 11 p.m. Their voices drifted through the walls, too low to make out words at first, but the tone was clear. Urgent. Calculating. Every few minutes, footsteps passed my door. Checking, making sure I stayed put. I thought about the burner phone Detective Blake had given me hidden under my pillow. One text and the team outside would come crashing in, but Blake's words echoed. We need a confession. Something that will hold up in court. The clock ticked toward midnight. I counted ceiling fan rotations like a prisoner counting days. The blades turned lazy circles in the darkness. 47, 48, 49. Dorothy used to fall asleep watching that fan spin. It's hypnotic, she'd say. Better than counting sheep. Now I was counting rotations and waiting for my daughter to decide when to act. 1 a.m. came and went. The house quieted. I heard a door close, the creak of bed springs in the master bedroom. My bedroom where Trevor and Stephanie had made themselves at home in the bed Dorothy lost dreaming of. Maybe they were sleeping now. Maybe I could... Footsteps in the hallway. I closed my eyes and forced my breathing into the deep, rhythmic pattern of sleep. In through the nose, out through barely parted lips. The kind of breathing that comes from a man who's given up fighting consciousness. The footsteps stopped outside my door. My heart hammered so hard I thought surely they'd hear it, but I kept my face slack, my body still. The doorknob turned. Slow. Testing. The door opened with the faint squeak it always made. I'd been meaning to oil those hinges for 3 years. Dorothy had asked me twice last month. Light from the hallway spilled across the bed. I felt someone's presence in the doorway. Watching. Evaluating. He's asleep. Stephanie's whisper barely audible. Trevor's voice from the hallway equally quiet. Keep him that way. We need him alert tomorrow. After he signs the papers, we'll handle the rest. His tone was ice cold. A pause. Then Stephanie, uncertain. What do you mean? He's old. Old people have accidents. Trevor's words came slow and deliberate. Falls. Heart attacks. No one questions it. The door clicked shut. Their footsteps retreated down the hallway. A door closed. Then silence. I lay there in the darkness, rage and terror warring in my chest. My own daughter, standing in my doorway, discussing my death like she was planning a grocery list. Dorothy would have been devastated. No. Dorothy had been devastated. That's why she'd documented everything in that journal. Why she'd tried to warn me 5 years ago when Stephanie first brought Trevor home. There's something wrong about him, she'd said. I can feel it. I'd told her she was being overprotective. I waited until the house fell silent again. 2:30 a.m. according to the clock. Then I slid the burner phone from under my pillow and typed out a message to Detective Blake, thumbs clumsy in the darkness. They're planning for tomorrow. Overheard them discussing accident. Need extraction soon. The response came within 60 seconds. Hold position. We're monitoring the house. Lawyer arrives 9 a.m. Let them think they're winning. We need the confession. I typed back, overheard them at my door. Planning accident after I signed papers. Trevor said, old people have accidents. Recording device getting all of it. Good. Stay strong, Mr. Porter. Sunrise is 4 hours away. We move at 9. 4 hours. I had to survive 4 more hours. I set the phone back under the pillow and stared at the ceiling. The fan blades turned their endless circles. 112, 113, 114. Somewhere in this house in the bed I'd shared with Dorothy for 37 years, my daughter slept soundly, planning to get rid of me so she could collect insurance money and pay off her husband's debts. The rage that filled me was so pure, it almost burned away the fear. Almost. 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. The sky outside began to lighten. Gray dawn filtered through the curtains. Dorothy had made herself stitching them by hand, because she said store-bought never hung quite right. I heard movement in the kitchen. Coffee brewing, the clink of mugs. Normal morning sounds from a profoundly abnormal situation. 6 a.m., 7 a.m. I stayed in bed playing the exhausted, grieving widower who couldn't face another day. Let them think I was broken, confused, easy to manipulate. At 7:45, I finally shuffled out of the guest room, leaning heavily on my cane. Stephanie was in the kitchen brewing coffee like she owned the place. "Good morning, Daddy. Did you sleep?" "A little." I made my voice thin, uncertain. "Is the coffee ready?" "Almost." Her smile was warm, caring, the smile of a dutiful daughter. "Vernon Pike called. He'll be here at 9 to help with the paperwork. We'll get everything sorted out." I nodded slowly, like a man too tired to argue. At 8 a.m. exactly, someone knocked on the front door. That knock wasn't at the front door. It was Stephanie rapping softly on the guest bedroom door. "Daddy, are you awake?" I sat up slowly, making sure she heard the groan of effort. "I'm up." The door opened. Stephanie stepped in carrying a breakfast tray, like she was playing housewife in some twisted sitcom. Coffee, scrambled eggs, toast with butter, orange juice in a glass Dorothy had bought at an estate sale 15 years ago. "Good morning." Her smile was bright. Too bright. "I made breakfast, just the way you like it." She set the tray on the nightstand. The coffee cup steamed dark and aromatic. The kind of bold roast Dorothy used to make every Sunday morning. I reached for the cup, wrapping both hands around it. Let the warmth seep into my palms, brought it close to my face, and inhaled. "Thank you, sweetheart. This is very thoughtful." "Of course." She perched on the edge of the bed, watching me. "A friend of Trevor's is coming by at 9. A lawyer, Vernon Pike. He's going to help us sort out the estate paperwork." Very routine. I held the cup but didn't drink. "That's very efficient of you. We just want to make sure everything's handled properly. You know how complicated these things can get." Her hand touched my arm. "Why don't you get dressed? We want you looking your best." "I will." She stood smoothing her dress. "Take your time. Drink your coffee while it's hot." The door closed behind her. I counted to 30. Then I stood and walked to the window where Dorothy's potted fern sat on the sill, the one she'd kept alive for 12 years through sheer, stubborn will. I poured the entire cup of coffee into the soil. The liquid disappeared into the dark earth. I thought about Dorothy's journal entry from March. Stephanie brought tea again, dumped it in the azaleas when she wasn't looking. Something about it doesn't smell right. Dorothy's azaleas had lost 2 weeks later. Sudden wilt. No explanation. This fern would be dead by tonight. But I wouldn't be. I rinsed the cup in the guest bathroom sink, filled it with water, and drank that instead. Then I got dressed. Khaki slacks, button-down shirt. The outfit of a confused old man trying to look respectable for official business. At 8:55, I shuffled out to the living room, leaning on my cane. Trevor was there, pacing near the front window, watching the street. His Rolex caught the morning light. The expensive watch of a man who owed $560,000 by Friday. Stephanie emerged from the kitchen. "Would you like more coffee, Daddy?" "No, thank you. I'm fine." At 9 a.m. exactly, the doorbell rang. Vernon Pike looked exactly like what he was, a lawyer who'd given up ethics somewhere around his third divorce. Mid-50s. Slick smile. Expensive suit that didn't quite fit right, like he'd bought it on sale and never had it tailored. A leather briefcase that probably cost more than my truck. "Mr. Porter." He extended his hand. His grip was too firm, too long. "I'm Vernon Pike. I'm here to simplify your life. Come in." I shook his hand weakly, playing my part. Trevor and Stephanie flanked me as we moved to the living room. They positioned themselves on either side of the sofa, where I sat blocking the exits. Though they probably thought they were being supportive. Vernon settled into Dorothy's favorite chair, the one she used to read in every evening. Seeing him there made my jaw clench, but I kept my expression vacant. He opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency. "Now, Mr. Porter, I understand you've recently suffered a terrible loss. My condolences." "Thank you." In times like these, legal matters can seem overwhelming. That's why I'm here to make this as painless as possible. He pulled out a stack of documents. "We're going to establish some basic protections for you and your assets." "Protections?" "Absolutely." His smile widened. "With proper planning, we can ensure your finances are secure and your medical decisions are handled by people you trust." He was good. I'd give him that. The way he made theft and fraud sound like a public service. "What kind of planning?" "Simple things." Vernon laid 3 sets of documents on my coffee table like a dealer spreading cards. "Power of attorney. This allows Stephanie to manage your financial accounts. Very common for elderly individuals who find the day-to-day management overwhelming." I stared at the papers. "I see. A quit-claim deed. This transfers the house into joint ownership with Stephanie, protects against creditors, avoids probate complications." Dorothy had warned me about quit-claim deeds. "Never sign one," she'd said. "It's how people steal houses in broad daylight." And finally, a healthcare directive. This ensures Stephanie can make medical decisions on your behalf if you become incapacitated. If, not when. If, as in when they push me down the stairs and I'm lying in a hospital bed unable to speak, Stephanie gets to decide whether I live or die. "These are big decisions," I said slowly. My hand trembled not from fear this time, but from rage. "I'm not sure I understand everything." Of course. Vernon's tone was patronizing. "Take your time. Read through them. But I should mention, given the urgency of certain financial obligations, time is somewhat of a factor here." "Urgency." Trevor leaned forward. "Eugene Dominic Rousseau isn't going to wait forever. We need to secure the assets before he takes legal action." "I thought you said the house was only worth $300,000. That's not enough to cover your debt." The room went very quiet. Vernon recovered first. "Mr. Porter, I think you're confused about the life insurance," I said softly. $2.5 million. That would cover it, wouldn't it?" Stephanie's hand touched mine. "Daddy, you're tired. You're not thinking clearly." I looked at her. Really looked at her. My daughter. Dorothy's little girl. The child we'd raised, loved, sacrificed for. "You're right," I said finally. "I'm very tired." Vernon Pike spread the 3 documents across my coffee table like a card dealer laying out a hand. Power of attorney. Quit-claim deed. Healthcare directive. "Just a few signatures," he said smoothly. "Then this will all be over." My hand trembled as I reached for the pen. Vernon Pike slid it across the coffee table toward me. Expensive. Heavy. The kind of pen meant to sign away fortunes. The power of attorney document stared back at me. Blank signature line. One stroke of ink and Stephanie would control every dollar Dorothy and I had saved over 37 years. I let my fingers shake visibly as they closed around the pen, lifted it, let it hover over the paper. 2 years ago, I'd found Dorothy sitting at our kitchen table on a Sunday morning, with bank statements spread across the wood like evidence at a crime scene. I'd been reading the paper, coffee in hand, expecting a normal day. But nothing about Dorothy's face had been normal. "Eugene." Her voice was hollow. "Come look at this." I'd sat down beside her. She pushed the statements toward me. $150,000. Her finger traced the withdrawal lines. Gone. All of it. From the savings account. My chest had tightened. But that's impossible. I didn't authorize these transfers. Look at the dates. March, April, May, small amounts at first, then larger. She'd looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. It was Stephanie. We'd confronted her that afternoon. Right here in this living room where I now sat with a lawyer trying to steal everything we had left. Stephanie had cried like her heart was breaking. Mascara running, hands shaking. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." Trevor got into gambling, deep. These men, they threatened him, threatened to hurt him. I didn't know what to do. Dorothy had pulled her close. "Sweetheart, why didn't you come to us? We could have helped." I was ashamed. I thought I could fix it myself. Everyone makes mistakes. Dorothy's voice had been so gentle, so forgiving. "We'll get through this together." Dorothy had used her inheritance money from her mother, who'd lost 3 years earlier, to cover the debt. Every penny of it. $150,000 gone in an afternoon to save our daughter from her husband's mistakes. Stephanie had hugged Dorothy so tight. "I promise, Mom. I swear, this will never happen again. Never." Dorothy had believed her. But 1 year ago, I'd found Dorothy in her home office staring at her computer screen like it had just told her the world was ending. I'd walked in to ask about dinner and stopped cold at the look on her face. "Dorothy." She didn't look up, just pushed the monitor toward me. Her investment account, the one she'd inherited from her father years before that. Her safety net. Her rainy day money, she'd called it. The screen showed a balance of $862. It should have shown $340,000. "It's gone." Her voice was flat. "Dead. All of it." She did it again. "Maybe there's an explanation." She promised Eugene. Dorothy's eyes had met mine, and I'd seen something break in them. She looked me in the eye and promised, and I believed her. "Dorothy." "No." She'd stood suddenly furious. "Not this time. This time she learns. This is me loving her enough to teach her consequences." She'd called Judge Harrison Caldwell that afternoon, her employer of 15 years, a man who'd seen countless families torn apart by theft and lies. "I want to file charges," Dorothy had told him. "Embezzlement, fraud, whatever applies." I'd heard her crying in our bedroom that night. I'd held her while she sobbed. "I'm doing this because I love her," she'd whispered. "She'll hate me now. But maybe someday she'll understand." 6 months later, Dorothy was dead. "Mr. Porter." Vernon Pike's voice snapped me back to the present. I blinked, realizing I'd been staring at the papers for too long. The pen still hovered above the signature line, my hand still trembling. "Are you all right?" Stephanie's hand on my shoulder. Concern that would have seemed genuine if I didn't know what she'd done. "I need to use the bathroom." Trevor's hand clamped down on my other shoulder. "Can it wait? We're almost done here." I looked up at him, let my voice go thin and reedy. I'm an old man with a weak bladder? Do you want me to explain the mechanics of that here, or would you prefer I handle it privately? Stephanie's face twisted with disgust. Fine, but hurry up. I stood slowly gripping my cane, shuffled across the living room toward the guest bathroom, every step deliberate, feeble. Behind me, Vernon's voice, perhaps we should take a short break. Let Mr. Porter collect himself. I closed the bathroom door, locked it. The click echoed louder than it should have. My hands stopped shaking. I pulled out the burner phone and typed fast. They're getting impatient. Don't know how much longer I can stall. Blake's response came within seconds. Keep going. We need them to mention Dorothy. Connect themselves to what happened to her. I typed back, how ask about the investigation, about what Dr. Brennan told you. Make them think you know more than you do. Let them panic. Outside the bathroom door, I heard footsteps. Pacing, waiting. I put the phone away. Flushed the toilet. Ran the water in the sink, letting it run long enough to sound convincing. I opened the door and walked back into the living room. 3 faces turned toward me. Stephanie tried to smile. Trevor's jaw was tight. Vernon Pike checked his watch, expensive, but not as expensive as Trevor's Rolex. I lowered myself onto the sofa, slowly gripping my cane. Let them see an old man who'd barely made it to the bathroom and back. Now then. Vernon arranged the documents again, all business. Where were we? I didn't reach for the pen. Instead, I said, I've been thinking about Dorothy. Dad, this isn't the time. This is exactly the time. My voice shook, but not from fear. From rage I'd been holding back for days. She went so suddenly. The doctor said it was natural causes, but I keep thinking about those last few weeks. Vernon shifted in his seat. Mr. Porter, grief is natural, but we really should. How weak she was. I kept talking like he hadn't spoken. How confused. Dorothy was sharp as a tack her whole life, managed Judge Caldwell's books for 15 years without a single error. Then suddenly she couldn't remember what day it was. Stephanie's hand touched my arm. Daddy, she was sick. That's what happens. She kept saying something was wrong. I pulled my arm away. Said the tea tasted strange, bitter but also sweet, like someone was trying to cover up a bad flavor. The room went very quiet. She said her medication seemed different, tasted metallic. I told her she was imagining things. I looked at Stephanie. I didn't listen. I should have listened. Trevor cleared his throat. Eugene, you're upset. Understandable. But these documents, and then there's the money. I turned to face him directly. $340,000 disappeared from our accounts over the past year. Vernon Pike's briefcase clicked shut. The sound was too loud in the silent room. Forged checks. I recognized the handwriting. Stephanie. It was yours. Her face went white. I don't know what Your mother told me everything. She'd contacted Judge Harrison Caldwell. She was going to press charges. I let each word fall like a hammer. She told me the week before she passed away. Said she was doing it because she loved you, because you needed to learn consequences. Stephanie stood up so fast her chair rocked. How do you know about that? I looked at her, really looked at her. Your mother told me everything. The lie came easy. Dorothy hadn't told me she'd written it in her journal, documented it for Dr. Brennan, but they didn't need to know that. She told you, Stephanie's voice was shrill, when you said you didn't know anything. I said a lot of things. I kept my voice steady. Confused old man. Grief-stricken widower. Can't think straight. Can't remember passwords. Needs help managing his affairs. Trevor moved closer. His cologne was overwhelming. Old man, you don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I met his eyes. And I know Dorothy caught you stealing. Both times. First 150,000. She forgave that one. Used her mother's inheritance to pay your gambling debts. Trevor's hand clenched into a fist. Then you did it again. $340,000. From her father's investment account. The money she'd saved for 30 years. Vernon Pike stood up. Mr. Porter, I think I should leave. Sit down, Vernon. My voice was steel. You're part of this. Power of attorney. Quit claim deed. Healthcare directive. 3 documents designed to give them complete control over everything Dorothy and I built. He sat. Dorothy wasn't going to let it go the second time. She called Judge Caldwell. She was filing charges, embezzlement, fraud, forgery. I looked at Stephanie. You would have gone to prison. Stop it. Her voice broke. Just stop. But then Dorothy got sick. How convenient. Started feeling weak in January. By March, she could barely stand. April, she collapsed in the garden. I let the words hang in the air. The doctor said stroke. Natural causes. Case closed. You're confused, Trevor said. His voice was dangerous now. Flat. Grief is making you paranoid. Am I? I reached into my pocket. Not for the recording device that would give everything away, just a gesture, a threat. Because Dr. Charles Brennan called me 1 week after the funeral, said there was something wrong with Dorothy's blood work. Stephanie's hand flew to her mouth. Said someone should have caught it earlier. Asked if I'd noticed anything strange in the weeks before she passed away. Vernon Pike was halfway to the door. Sit down, Vernon. You're going to want to hear this. He froze. I told Dr. Brennan about the tea, about how Dorothy said it tasted bitter, about how Stephanie brought tea every Sunday, always from that special shop she liked. I turned to my daughter. What was in that tea, Stephanie? Nothing. I don't. This is insane. Dad, you're not well. The grief is, I'm not the one who's not well. I stood up, not needing the cane anymore. Let them see me strong, clear-eyed, dangerous. Dorothy was poisoned, slowly, over months. Someone who had access to her food, her medication. Someone who visited every week. Trevor stepped forward. His face was dark with rage. Old man, you don't know what you're talking about. I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the expensive watch bought with stolen money. At the cologne meant to cover the smell of desperation. At the hands that had held my wife's medication bottle. I don't know, I said quietly. I know about the digoxin. I can feel the tension building, and I hope you can too. If you're still here, leave a comment telling me your thoughts. What do you think Trevor will do when he realizes he's been caught? I genuinely want to hear your take. Quick note, this story includes fictional elements designed for dramatic effect. If you'd rather not continue, that's completely okay. But if you're ready for what comes next, buckle up. The word digoxin hung in the air like a gunshot. The room froze. Trevor's face went white. Stephanie's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Vernon Pike's hand was still on his briefcase handle halfway to standing. I kept my voice calm, steady. I know you refilled Dorothy's digoxin prescription 7 times in 6 months. Let that sink in. Watched their faces. At 3 different pharmacies across Richmond, Trevor's jaw clenched. CVS on West Broad Street. Walgreens on Monument Avenue. Rite Aid in Carytown. I pointed at Stephanie. All under your name. Each pharmacy name landed like a blow. Stephanie took a step backward, her hand reaching for the wall. I know that medication was found in her blood at levels 4 to 5 times higher than normal. My voice was still calm, but something had shifted in the room. The air felt heavy, dangerous. Doctor, Brennan prescribed 0.25 milligrams once daily. Dorothy's blood showed 8.3 nanograms per milliliter. That's not an accident. Vernon Pike set his briefcase down slowly. His face had gone gray. She was poisoned. Slowly. Deliberately. Over 6 months. Small amounts added to her tea. To her food. Enough to mimic natural causes. Trevor's hands clenched into fists. You can't prove anything. You're just a confused old man making wild accusations. Grief does that, makes people paranoid. His voice was smooth, practiced. Stephanie's laugh came out shrill. Dad, please. You're not well. No one will believe you. Maybe not. I reached slowly into my jacket pocket. Trevor tensed, fighter's stance, ready to move. I pulled out the recording device, small, black, size of a lighter. Held it up between my thumb and forefinger. Pointed to the small red light blinking steadily on its side. But they'll believe this. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then comprehension dawned on their faces. Trevor's face flushed crimson. Stephanie's hand flew to her mouth. Vernon Pike took a step toward the door. You recorded us. Stephanie's voice was barely a whisper. Everything, I said. The coffee this morning, the documents, your conversation at 2 a.m., every single word. Absolute silence. Then Trevor moved. He was fast, terrifyingly fast. He crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands closed around my throat. The impact drove me backward. My cane clattered to the floor. My back hit the wall picture frames, rattling. You stupid old man! His face was inches from mine, twisted with rage. You think you can trap us? I couldn't breathe. My hands clawed at his fingers, but he was too strong. His grip was iron. 20 years younger. 40 pounds heavier. Desperate. All you had to do was sign. His voice was raw, animal. I play the confused old widower, sign the papers, and fade away. The recording device fell from my hand. I heard it skitter across the hardwood floor, sliding toward the fireplace. My vision started to narrow, black spots dancing at the edges. I heard Stephanie screaming, but the sound seemed far away. Trevor's cologne was overwhelming. His Rolex pressed cold against my neck as his grip tightened. We needed that money. His breath was hot on my face. Dominic would have ended me. My lungs burned. Fire in my chest. My throat was being crushed. 20 years in the Air Force. 2 combat deployments in hostile territory. I'd survived surface-to-air missiles. Equipment failures at 30,000 feet. I wasn't going to die in my own living room. I brought my knee up, hard, fast. Military training overriding panic. Trevor grunted. His grip loosened for just a second. Half a second, but it was enough. I sucked in half a breath before his hands tightened again. You should have stayed confused. His voice was breaking now. Raw, desperate. You should have just signed the papers and passed away quietly like Dorothy. The words hit harder than his hands. Like Dorothy. He just said it. Out loud. With witnesses. He just confessed. On tape. My vision was going dark. The edges closing in like a tunnel. Everything narrowing to Trevor's rage-twisted face and Stephanie's voice high and panicked somewhere behind him. Trevor, stop. You're going to hurt him. That's the point. Vernon Pike's voice distant. This is insane. I'm leaving. My vision tunneled. Trevor's face started to fade. The pressure on my throat was overwhelming. Everything started going dark. Then I heard an explosion. Voices, so many voices. Footsteps like thunder. Hands grabbed Trevor, yanking him backward. His grip on my throat released. I collapsed, gasping. Police, nobody move! My vision swam. Blurred shapes in tactical gear. Black uniforms. Weapons drawn. So many of them flooding into my living room. Someone slammed Trevor face down onto the hardwood floor. A knee pressed into his back. Metal clicked handcuffs snapping shut. Trevor Coleman, you are under arrest for assault and battery attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Stephanie screamed. You can't do this. He's lying. This is entrapment. An officer, a woman young professional, moved toward her with handcuffs ready. Ma'am, put your hands behind your back. No, you don't understand. That old man set us up. Hands behind. Your back. Now. I was sitting on my couch. When had I gotten to the couch, someone, a paramedic in blue, was shining a light in my eyes. How many fingers am I holding up? 3. I rasped. My throat felt like broken glass. Detective Christopher Blake stepped through the chaos badge clipped to his belt. His face was calm, professional, but his eyes held satisfaction. He walked to where the recording device had fallen near the fireplace. Bent down, picked it up carefully. The red light still blinked. Blake pressed a button. The room fell silent as my voice filled the space. I know about the digoxin. Stephanie's recorded laugh. No one will believe you. Trevor's voice thick with rage. You stupid old man. The sound of struggle. My gasping. Trevor's confession clear as a bell. You should have just signed and passed away quietly like Dorothy. Blake stopped the playback, looked at Stephanie, who'd gone very still. Stephanie Coleman. Blake said, his voice carrying official authority. You are under arrest for the murder of Dorothy Porter. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Stephanie's face crumpled. Daddy, please. I didn't mean to. Trevor made me. He said we had no choice. Do you understand these rights as I have explained them to you? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Blake turned to Trevor, who was being hauled to his feet by 2 officers. Trevor Coleman, you are under arrest for the murder of Dorothy Porter, assault and battery of Eugene Porter, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Trevor's face was purple with rage. This is bullshit. That recording is inadmissible. This is entrapment. Actually, Blake said calmly, you were acting as a private citizen documenting a crime in progress, perfectly legal, and you just confessed on tape, with multiple witnesses, in front of a licensed attorney. Vernon Pike was still in the corner, hands raised, looking like he wanted to disappear. They led Trevor and Stephanie out in separate directions. Stephanie was crying. Trevor was shouting about lawyers and rights. Officers guided them through my front door, out onto Monument Avenue where neighbors had gathered. I watched from my porch, a paramedic's hands still gentle on my throat. Bruised, she said, windpipe intact. Lucky. 2 separate police cars. Standard procedure. Keep the suspects apart. Trevor went in the first car, still shouting. Stephanie and the second silent, now staring at nothing. The neighbors watched. Mrs. Patterson from next door. The Johnsons from across the street. All of them staring. Phones out. Recording. The modern way of bearing witness. The police cars pulled away, lights flashing red and blue against the evening sky. Then, it was just me and the crime scene techs, and Detective Blake standing in my living room that no longer felt like home. "You should get that throat checked at the hospital," Blake said. I'm fine." He didn't argue, just handed me a card. "My direct line. You'll need to come in tomorrow, give a formal statement, but tonight you should rest." Rest. In the house where Dorothy passed away, where my daughter had planned my murder. "I'll stay with Gerald," I heard myself say. Blake nodded. "Good. Don't stay here alone tonight." He left. The techs left. Eventually, everyone left. I stood in my empty living room as the sun set, painting the walls orange and purple. 3 days later, Detective Blake came back. He sat across from me at my kitchen table, the same table where Dorothy had discovered the first theft 2 years ago, and laid out a manila folder. "We found something else during the investigation," he said carefully. He pulled out photographs. A small house in Arlington. A woman young, maybe 28, standing on the porch. Pretty, blonde. Nothing like Stephanie. "Trevor had a mistress," Blake said. "He used $140,000 of the stolen money to buy this house for her. Put it in her name. He was planning to leave Stephanie after he collected the insurance money." My stomach turned. Only $200,000 went to Dominic Russo to pay off the gambling debts. The rest, $140,000, went to this woman. Stephanie had no idea. "She killed her mother for him," I said slowly. "And he was going to leave her anyway." Blake nodded. "She killed her mother for a man who was already planning his exit. Dorothy passed away for nothing. Less than nothing. For a lie wrapped inside another lie." I sat in my empty house that night, the house Dorothy and I had bought 37 years ago. The house we'd filled with memories and love, and a daughter who'd grown up to poison her own mother. Stephanie had killed Dorothy for a man who'd already bought a house for someone else. Dorothy had passed away for a number, for money that was already spent, for a betrayal stacked on top of another betrayal. She passed away for nothing at all. The weeks after the arrest blurred together like a fever dream. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt Trevor's hands around my throat, smelled his cologne, heard Stephanie's voice, "Daddy, please." I couldn't eat. Gerald Thompson brought casseroles from the church ladies. They sat untouched in my refrigerator until they spoiled. The anger consumed me. It burned through my chest, like acid eating away at everything until there was nothing left but rage. Gerald found me one afternoon sitting in Dorothy's chair. I hadn't showered in 3 days, hadn't changed clothes. "Eugene." His voice was gentle but firm. "You need help, brother. Professional help. This anger is going to kill you." "Good," I said. "No." He pulled up a chair. "Not good. Dorothy wouldn't want this. She'd want you to survive, to heal." "How?" The word came out raw. "How do I live knowing my daughter poisoned her mother? Knowing I didn't listen when Dorothy tried to warn me?" Gerald was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You get help. You talk to someone who knows how to handle trauma." 2 days later, I found myself in an office on the west side of Richmond. A woman in her late 40s with kind eyes and graying hair sat across from me. "I'm Dr. Laura Brennan," she said. "I specialize in trauma counseling, grief, family betrayal." So I told her, all of it. Dorothy's collapse, the funeral, the investigation, Trevor's hands around my throat, Stephanie being led away in handcuffs. When I finished, she was quiet. "Hey, what's the hardest part?" she finally asked. I should have listened to Dorothy. The words burst out of me. 5 years ago, she warned me about Trevor. She knew, and I dismissed her. Tell me about that. 5 years ago, it had been a Thursday evening in late September. Stephanie wanted to bring someone home for dinner. Someone special. Trevor Coleman walked into our house wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Expensive watch. That cologne that made my eyes water. He shook my hand too firmly, held it too long. Smiled with his mouth, but not his eyes. Dorothy made pot roast. Her specialty. Trevor complimented everything, asked all the right questions about my Air Force career, about Dorothy's work with Judge Caldwell. He was smooth, practiced. After they left, Dorothy pulled me into the kitchen. Her face was troubled. "I don't trust him," she said. "You just met him." "I know. But something about him feels wrong. His eyes are cold. He looks at Stephanie like she's an asset, not a person." "You're being overprotective," I'd said. "Stephanie's a grown woman." "Eugene." She'd grabbed my arm, her grip tight. My gut is telling me this man is going to hurt her. Hurt us. Your gut isn't always right, honey. But it had been. Dorothy's gut had been screaming danger, and I'd told her she was imagining things. Back in Dr. Brennan's office, tears ran down my face. "I chose peace over protection," I said. Dorothy passed away, knowing I didn't believe her, didn't trust her judgment. "Mr. Porter." Dr. Brennan leaned forward. "You couldn't have known Trevor would become a man who would harm someone. Intuition isn't the same as evidence. But I could have tried. I could have asked questions, done background checks, something. And now Dorothy is gone. Stephanie is in jail awaiting trial, and I have to testify against my own daughter." My voice broke. "How do I do that?" "You're not testifying against Stephanie," Dr. Brennan said gently. "You're testifying for Dorothy, for justice, for the truth. There's a difference." Over the following weeks, I went back to Dr. Brennan's office. We talked about guilt, about grief, about the complexity of loving someone who's done something unforgivable. "You can mourn the daughter you thought you had," she told me, while still holding accountable the woman she became. 8 months passed. 8 months of therapy, of nightmares, of prosecutors visiting my house preparing me to testify. They showed me evidence, walked me through what questions would be asked. "She'll likely try to make eye contact," the lead prosecutor warned me. "To play on your emotions. It's a common defense tactic." I visited Dorothy's grave every week, sat on the bench under the oak tree and talked to her. "I got them, honey," I'd say. "I'm getting justice for you. I'm so sorry I didn't listen. But I'm making it right now. I promise." Gerald came with me most times. Didn't say much. Just stood there solid and present, a reminder that I wasn't alone. The prosecutors were thorough. We went over my testimony again and again until I could recite it in my sleep. The pharmacy records, Dorothy's journal entries, the recording of Trevor's confession. "You were extraordinarily brave, Mr. Porter," the lead prosecutor told me. I didn't feel brave. I felt old, tired, broken. But I'd made a promise to Dorothy, and I was going to keep it. 8 months after the arrest, on a cold February morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and straightened my tie. The same black suit I'd worn to Dorothy's funeral, the same white shirt, the same black shoes. Gerald waited downstairs. He'd offered to drive me. I'd accepted. "You ready?" he asked when I came down. "No," I said. But it doesn't matter. We drove to the Richmond County Courthouse in silence. The building loomed ahead, gray stone and white columns, the weight of justice pressing down from every angle. I climbed the steps slowly. Gerald walked beside me. This time I wasn't burying my wife. I was burying my daughter. The Richmond County Courthouse rose before me like a monument to justice or judgment. Gray stone, white columns, heavy doors that had swung open for countless trials over the past century and a half. Gerald walked beside me up those steps, his hand on my elbow, steadying me even though I didn't need it. Inside the courtroom was packed, every seat filled, media in the back rows, cameras prohibited, but notebooks out, pens ready. I recognized faces from the neighborhood. Mrs. Henderson, the Johnsons, people who'd brought casseroles after Dorothy passed away, now here to watch me testify against my daughter. The judge's bench sat elevated at the front, imposing. To the left, the jury box held 12 faces, 7 women, 5 men, strangers, who would decide my daughter's fate. The prosecution table on the right, 2 defense tables on the left, separated by several feet. Stephanie at one, Trevor at the other. Separate trials, the prosecutor had explained, but conducted simultaneously for efficiency. Same evidence, same witnesses. 2 juries hearing the same story, reaching their own conclusions. I took my seat in the gallery, waited. The bailiff called the court to order. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, entered. Everyone stood, sat, the machinery of justice grinding into motion. The first time I testified was about Dorothy's final months. The bailiff led me to the witness stand, his hand gentle on my elbow, like I might break. I placed my hand on the Bible. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I looked at Stephanie. She sat rigid at the defense table, hands folded, eyes down. She wouldn't look at me. I swear. The lead prosecutor, a woman named Jennifer Davis, mid-40s, sharp and professional, approached. Mr. Porter, can you describe your wife's condition in the months before she passed away? I took a breath. Thought about Dorothy sitting at our kitchen table, confused about what day it was, about her stumbling in the hallway, grabbing the wall for support. She was weak, confused. She'd forget things, simple things like whether she'd taken her medication. She complained about feeling dizzy, nauseous. My voice caught. She said the tea tasted wrong, bitter but also sweet, like someone was trying to mask a bad flavor. And who brought her tea during this period? Stephanie, my daughter. She visited every Sunday for 6 months, always brought tea from a shop she liked. Did you think anything was suspicious at the time? No. The word came out hollow. I thought Dorothy was being paranoid, getting old. I didn't listen. 3 days later, I was back on that witness stand. This time, Ms. Davis asked about money. Mr. Porter, were you aware of any financial discrepancies in your wife's accounts? 2 incidents. The first was 2 years ago. $150,000 missing from our joint savings. Dorothy traced it to Stephanie. Forged signatures. Forged authorization forms. What happened? Dorothy forgave her, used her mother's inheritance to cover the debt. Stephanie promised it would never happen again. And did it happen again? Yes. 1 year ago, $340,000 from Dorothy's personal investment account. Money she'd inherited from her father. The courtroom was silent. Even the reporters had stopped writing. What did Dorothy do? She called Judge Harrison Caldwell, her employer. She was filing criminal charges, embezzlement, fraud, forgery. Ms. Davis nodded. And when did Dorothy pass away? 6 months later. She let that timeline hang in the air. 6 months after deciding to press charges, Dorothy was dead. My final testimony was the hardest. A week into the trial, Ms. Davis walked me through the day of the confrontation. "Tell the jury what happened at the funeral reception." I overheard Trevor and Stephanie talking. They needed $560,000 by that Friday. Someone named Dominic Russo was threatening them. They were planning to pressure me into signing a power of attorney. What happened next? I went home. The front door was open. The house had been ransacked. They were trying to break into the wall safe in our bedroom. And that night, I heard them through the walls, planning. Stephanie said I was confused, that I didn't suspect them. Trevor talked about how old people have accidents, falls, heart attacks. Stephanie's lawyer shot to his feet. "Objection, hearsay." The judge looked at me. "Mr. Porter, did you record this conversation?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Objection overruled. The recording will be entered as evidence." The prosecution played the tape. The courtroom fell silent as Trevor's voice filled the space, cold and calculating. "Old people have accidents, falls, heart attacks. No one questions it." Then my voice trembling. "I know about the digoxin, the struggle, Trevor's rage, his confession, you should have just signed and passed away quietly like Dorothy." When the recording ended, several jurors were crying. Stephanie sat with her head in her hands. Trevor stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. The defense attorneys tried. They really tried. Stephanie's lawyer approached during cross-examination, his tone sympathetic. "Mr. Porter, you've been through a terrible trauma. You're grieving. Isn't it possible your hearing aids malfunctioned, that you misheard?" "My hearing aids work perfectly," I said calmly. I heard every word. "But grief can distort perception, make us see conspiracies where there's just tragedy." "Grief didn't forge those checks," I said. "Grief didn't refill digoxin prescriptions 7 times in 6 months at 3 different pharmacies. Grief didn't poison my wife." Trevor's lawyer took a different approach. "Mr. Porter, isn't it true you entrapped my client? Set up an elaborate sting operation?" "I documented a crime in progress," I said. "With the guidance of law enforcement. You wore a wire. You provoked him. I asked questions about my wife's death. He chose to attack me. He chose to confess." Then came Trevor's testimony. His lawyer tried to paint him as a victim, but Trevor couldn't help himself. Couldn't resist shifting blame. "Stephanie wanted her mother dead," he said from the stand, his voice flat. "She came to me with the plan, said we needed the insurance money, said her mother was going to destroy her with those criminal charges. I just helped my wife." Stephanie's face went white. Her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear. Stephanie's defense rested on battered woman syndrome. Her lawyer presented photos, bruises on her arms, her ribs, her back, medical records documenting injuries over 3 years. "My client was systematically abused," her lawyer argued. "Coerced, manipulated. Trevor Coleman controlled every aspect of her life, including this crime." The prosecution presented their rebuttal: pharmacy records with Stephanie's signature, bank statements showing her accessing accounts, Dorothy's journal entries about Stephanie's visits, the tea, the strange taste. Judge Caldwell testified about Dorothy's call. She was frightened, but resolute. She said Stephanie had stolen from her twice, that she loved her daughter enough to teach her consequences. The trials lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of evidence, of testimony, of watching my daughter sit in that orange jumpsuit looking 20 years older than 36. Finally, the prosecution rested. The judge looked at Stephanie. The defendant may now present a victim impact statement. Stephanie stood slowly. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight. Her hair, once carefully styled, hung limp and greasy. Her eyes were hollow. She looked at me for the first time since the trial began. And I looked back at the stranger wearing my daughter's face. Stephanie stood slowly. She'd lost at least 20 pounds since the arrest, her frame thin and fragile beneath the prison uniform. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the defense table for support. The bailiff gestured toward the witness stand. She walked there on unsteady legs, each step seeming to take enormous effort. The courtroom fell silent. Even the reporters stopped writing pens hovering over notebooks. She didn't sit, just stood there facing the judge, facing me. Our eyes met for the first time in weeks. Hers were red-rimmed, swollen from crying. Mine felt dry, empty. Like I'd used up all my tears months ago. The judge nodded. "You may proceed, Ms. Coleman." Stephanie's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Dad!" She stopped, swallowed, tried again. "Dad." I know the word sorry doesn't mean anything now. It's too small, too empty for what I've done. Her voice cracked. She gripped the railing in front of her knuckles white. "I killed Mom. I killed the woman who gave me life, who forgave me once when I stole her money, who loved me unconditionally even when I didn't deserve it." A sob escaped her throat. She pressed her hand to her mouth, struggling for control. "Trevor manipulated me. Yes, he hit me, threatened me, controlled every aspect of my life. The photos you saw, those bruises, were real. The fear was real." She looked at Trevor's table. He sat motionless, face blank, staring at nothing. "But I still made the choice. I still put the poison in Mom's tea." The words fell like stones into still water. Ripples of shock spread through the courtroom. Every Sunday, every single Sunday for 6 months, Mom welcomed me into her home, made me feel safe, hugged me goodbye. Her voice broke completely. And every time I was killing her, a little more each visit. Watching her get weaker, watching her forget things, watching her stumble and fall. Tears streamed down her face, now unchecked. She told me the tea tasted wrong, said it was bitter, and she couldn't continue for a moment. I told her she was imagining things, told her she was getting old, made her doubt her own mind while I poisoned her. I sat frozen in my seat. Gerald's hand found my shoulder, squeezed hard. I chose money over my mother. I chose a man who beat me over the woman who gave birth to me. I chose Trevor's gambling debts over my mother's life. She looked directly at me now, eyes pleading for something, forgiveness, understanding I didn't know. This mistake, this sin, can never be fixed. There's no redemption for what I've done, no taking it back, no making it right. Her voice dropped to barely audible. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'll never deserve it. She wiped her face with her sleeve, the orange fabric rough against her skin. I just ask that you remember Mom the way she was. Don't remember how she died. Remember her smile, her kindness, her ability to forgive even when it hurt her. A pause, a breath. Then, and Dad. She looked straight at me. I'm so sorry. I know you'll never forgive me. I'll never forgive myself. She broke down completely then, sobs racking her thin frame. The bailiff stepped forward, but she waved him away, stumbling back to her seat. Her lawyer put an arm around her shoulders as she buried her face in her hands. I sat there like stone, feeling nothing, feeling everything. Tears ran down my face, but I didn't wipe them away, just let them fall. Gerald's hand stayed on my shoulder. Steady, solid. A reminder I wasn't alone in this. The closing arguments were brief. The prosecution laid out the evidence again. The digoxin refills the forged checks, the recording of Trevor's confession. A clear case of premeditated murder driven by greed. Stephanie's defense painted a picture of an abused woman coerced and controlled, acting under duress. They didn't deny the crime, just asked for mercy in sentencing. Trevor's defense tried to shift all blame to Stephanie, painted him as a loving husband trying to help his troubled wife. But the recording destroyed that narrative, his own voice cold and calculating. You should have passed away quietly like Dorothy. The juries deliberated for 2 days. On the 3rd day, we were called back to the courtroom. The same packed gallery, the same media presence, the same weight of judgment pressing down on everyone. The judge entered. We stood, sat. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. My heart hammered against my ribs. Gerald sat beside me, solid and silent. In the matter of the Commonwealth of Virginia versus Trevor Coleman on the charge of first-degree murder, how do you find guilty? Stephanie's shoulders shook with silent sobs. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On the charge of attempted murder of Eugene Porter, guilty. Trevor's face remained blank, emotionless, like he'd expected this all along. The judge turned to the second jury, in the matter of the Commonwealth of Virginia versus Stephanie Coleman on the charge of first-degree murder, how do you find a long pause? Then guilty. I closed my eyes, felt the words settle into my bones. 3 weeks later, we gathered again for sentencing. The judge looked at Trevor first. Mr. Coleman, you have been found guilty of first-degree murder conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Your actions were calculated, premeditated, and showed a complete disregard for human life. The court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Trevor's jaw clenched. Nothing else. No emotion. No reaction. The judge turned to Stephanie. Her face was softer now, more thoughtful. Ms. Coleman, you have been found guilty of first-degree murder. However, the court recognizes significant mitigating factors, evidence of systematic abuse, coercion, manipulation, your genuine remorse and cooperation with law enforcement. Stephanie looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. The court sentences you to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. 25 years. My daughter would be 61 when she got out. If she got out. The courtroom erupted. Media scrambling. Trevor being led away in chains. Stephanie sobbing as the bailiffs approached. She looked at me one last time before they took her away. Mouthed something I couldn't hear. Maybe I'm sorry, maybe I love you, maybe nothing at all. Then she was gone. I walked out of that courthouse into the brilliant Virginia sunshine. Gerald walked beside me silent. The steps seemed steeper than they had 3 weeks ago. The air felt heavier. You okay? Gerald asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. Just stood there on the courthouse steps, feeling the sun on my face. I don't feel victorious, I finally said. I don't feel satisfied. I just feel empty, hollowed out. Like someone scooped everything out of me and left just the shell. Gerald nodded. Didn't try to fix it. Didn't offer platitudes. just stood there beside me. Justice had been served. The killers had been convicted. Dorothy's murder had been avenged. But none of it brought her back, and none of it healed the hole where my family used to be. The courtroom chapter is closed, but Eugene's journey continues. If you're still here, comment below and let me know, what would you do next if you were him? Could you forgive? Could you move on? Share your perspective. Just a heads up, this narrative includes fictional details for storytelling impact. If you'd prefer not to continue, that's fine. But if you want to see where this story leads, let's keep going together. 3 months after the sentencing, I sat alone in the house on Monument Avenue. The same house Dorothy and I had bought 37 years ago. The same house where we'd raised Stephanie. The same house where Dorothy had been poisoned. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a museum, a shrine to a life that no longer existed. Dorothy's garden had gone to seed. The white azaleas she'd planted along the walkway were brown and withered. I couldn't bring myself to tend them. Couldn't bring myself to touch anything that had been hers. I went to her grave every Sunday, sat on the bench under the oak tree and talked to her like she could hear me. Told her about the trial, about the sentencing, about the emptiness that filled every corner of my life now. Gerald stopped by most days, made sure I ate, made sure I wasn't sitting in the dark. He didn't say much. Just his presence was enough. The letter arrived on a Thursday afternoon in late May. I'd been sorting through Dorothy's things, a task I'd been avoiding for months. Her closet still smelled like her perfume. Her reading glasses sat on the nightstand where she'd left them the morning she collapsed. The mailman knocked. A registered letter requiring signature. I signed without looking, carried the envelope inside. Prison return address. Virginia Correctional Center for Women. Stephanie's name in the corner. My first instinct was to throw it away unopened. I stood at the kitchen trash can, envelope in hand, for a full minute. But something stopped me. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the faint hope that she'd written to apologize again. Maybe just the need to read her handwriting one more time. I opened it. The handwriting was shaky, uncertain, nothing like Stephanie's usual precise script. Dad, I don't deserve to write to you. I don't deserve anything from you after what I've done. But I have to tell you this. I'm pregnant. 3 months along. My hands started shaking. I had to sit down. The baby is Trevor's. Conceived before everything fell apart. Before the arrest. Before the trial. I don't deserve to ask you for anything after what I did to Mom. After what I did to you. But this baby is innocent. This baby carries your blood. Dorothy's blood. I can't raise a child in prison. The baby will be born here and taken into state custody unless I know I have no right to ask. But would you? Please, Dad. Don't let my child pay for my sins. Stephanie Thurcom. I crumpled the letter, threw it across the kitchen. It hit the refrigerator and fell to the floor. A baby. Stephanie was having a baby. Trevor's baby. The child of 2 murderers. I grabbed my phone. Called Gerald. She wants me to take the baby, I said when he answered. My voice was raw. Angry. How can I do that? Every time I look at that child, I'll see Trevor. I'll see Stephanie. I'll see the people who killed Dorothy. Gerald was quiet for a long moment. Then, you'll also see Dorothy's grandchild. An innocent life. What would Dorothy want? Dorothy's dead because of them. I know, brother. I know. His voice was gentle but firm. But this baby didn't choose its parents. Didn't choose any of this. This child is a victim too. I hung up, sat in my empty kitchen and stared at the crumpled letter on the floor. The weeks that followed were a blur of internal warfare. Part of me wanted to refuse, to let the state take custody, to wash my hands of anything connected to Stephanie and Trevor. But another part, the part that had loved Dorothy for 37 years, kept hearing Gerald's question. What would Dorothy want? I made an appointment with Dr. Laura Brennan. I don't know if I can do this, I told her. Raise the child of the people who murdered my wife. Look at that baby every day and not feel rage. Dr. Brennan leaned forward. Mr. Porter, this child didn't choose their parents. They didn't choose to be born into this tragedy. They're as much a victim as anyone. But how do I separate the child from what their parents did? By choosing to. Every day. By deciding that this innocent life deserves better than the sins of their parents. I thought about Dorothy, about her capacity for forgiveness, about how she'd given Stephanie a second chance even after the first theft. She'd been wrong to do that. It had cost her everything, but this was different. This was a child who hadn't done anything wrong, hadn't stolen, hadn't poisoned, hadn't killed. I remembered something Dorothy had said to me years ago when we were discussing Stephanie's childhood. We'd been sitting in this same kitchen, coffee cooling on the table between us. Family isn't just blood, Eugene, she'd said. It's who you choose to love, who you choose to protect, who you choose to show up for. I wrote back to Stephanie 2 weeks later. I will take the baby. Not for you. Not for Trevor. For the child. For Dorothy's memory. But understand this. I'm not doing this to forgive you. I'm doing this because an innocent child deserves a chance at life. Deserves to know they're wanted. The baby will know who their grandmother was. The real Dorothy. Not the woman you poisoned. The woman who loved unconditionally. Who forgave too easily. Who saw the best in people even when they didn't deserve it. Don't write to me again unless it's about the child's health. Eugene. The months passed slowly. I converted Dorothy's old sewing room into a nursery, painted the walls a soft yellow, bought a crib, baby clothes, diapers, books about infant care. Gerald helped me put together the furniture. Didn't comment on the tears that occasionally ran down my face while we worked. 12 months after the arrest, my phone rang at 2 a.m. Mr. Porter, this is Virginia Correctional Center. Stephanie is in labor. The baby will be born at the prison hospital. You should come. I drove through the darkness to the prison medical facility. A grim building surrounded by fences and security. Nothing like the bright, welcoming hospitals where babies should be born. They let me into the delivery room after the birth. Stephanie lay in the hospital bed, exhausted and pale. A nurse held a small bundle wrapped in a white blanket. It's a girl, Stephanie whispered. Healthy, 7 pounds 2 ounces. The nurse handed me the baby. She was so small, so perfect. Tiny fingers, dark hair, eyes squeezed shut against the harsh fluorescent lights. Stephanie watched me hold her daughter. Tears streamed down her face. She's beautiful, Stephanie said. She looks like Mom. I looked at the baby in my arms, at the tiny face that held no knowledge of murder or betrayal or poison, just innocence, just possibility. I don't deserve her, Stephanie whispered. I don't deserve you. No, I said quietly. You don't. But she does. I want to name her Dorothy, Stephanie said. After Mom, so her name lives on. So something good comes from all this. Dorothy. The name hit me like a physical blow. This tiny, perfect child carrying the name of the woman her mother had killed. But somehow it felt right. Felt like justice of a different kind. Dorothy. I repeated softly, looking down at the baby. Dorothy Porter. I held baby Dorothy for only a few minutes in that prison hospital. The nurses needed to prepare her for foster care processing and permanent custody transfer. But in those minutes, I whispered a promise into the space where she'd just been born. I'll tell you about your grandmother, the real Dorothy, the one who loved without limits. I'll make sure you know who she was. I brought baby Dorothy home from that prison hospital when I was 58 years old. Too old to be starting over with an infant. Too broken to know if I had anything left to give. But somehow we made it work. The first year was sleepless nights and fumbling through diaper changes. Gerald showed up most mornings with coffee and patience, teaching me things I'd forgotten from when Stephanie was a baby. Dr. Laura Brennan continued our therapy sessions. You're processing grief by becoming a father again, she told me. I didn't feel brave. I felt exhausted. But when baby Dorothy smiled at me for the first time, really smiled, something in my chest cracked open. By year 3, Dorothy was toddling through the garden where her grandmother had collapsed. I taught her to call me Grandpa. Together we planted white roses in the beds Dorothy had tended for decades. Year 5 brought kindergarten. Grandpa, why don't I have a mommy? She asked. I knelt down to her level. You do have a mommy, sweetheart. Your mom made mistakes, big mistakes. But she loves you very much. She had to go away for a long time. But you have me, and you have memories of your grandmother. By year 10, Dorothy had grown into a beautiful child. She had her grandmother's eyes, her grandmother's smile. I showed her photos, told her stories. Your grandmother was the kindest person I ever knew, I said. She forgave people even when they hurt her. Year 15 arrived faster than I expected. Dorothy was in 10th grade, now smart kind, carrying none of her mother's darkness. I was 73. The phone call came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Mr. Porter, this is Richmond Correctional Facility. Stephanie Coleman has been granted parole. She'll be released next week. I drove alone to Richmond Correctional Facility on the day of her release, parked outside, waited. The gates opened at dawn. Stephanie stepped out into the Virginia sunshine, 51 years old, now gray-haired and gaunt, wearing donated civilian clothes that hung loose on her thin frame. She saw me, started crying immediately. I nodded, opened the door. Didn't hug her. Then she saw Dorothy in the back seat, her daughter, 15 years old, a stranger. Stephanie's face crumpled. Dorothy. Hi, Mom. Dorothy's voice was small, uncertain. We drove home in silence. Stephanie kept turning around, staring at the daughter she'd never known. That first dinner, 3 generations at the same table, felt surreal. Stephanie asked Dorothy about school hobbies, friends. Dorothy answered politely but kept her distance. After Dorothy went to bed, Stephanie found me on the porch. I'm glad you named her Dorothy, she said quietly. It's the only good thing I have left. I looked at her. She deserves better than us. Better than what we gave her mother. I don't expect forgiveness, Stephanie continued. I just want a chance to know her. You'll have that chance. But understand something. I looked at her directly. Dorothy knows what you did. She knows you killed her grandmother. She knows about the trial, the evidence, everything. If you want a relationship with her, you'll earn it, every single day. Through actions, not words. I will. I promise. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of her. Later that night, I found Stephanie in Dorothy's old bedroom. Photos spread across the bed. Wedding pictures, baby pictures, family pictures. Mom was so beautiful, she whispered. I forgot how beautiful she was. She was beautiful inside, too. That's what you need to learn again. How to be beautiful inside. Can I be after what I did? I thought about Dorothy, about forgiveness, about second chances. Your mother believed everyone deserved a second chance, even you. But second chances aren't given. They're earned. This story taught me something I never wanted to learn. Blood doesn't mean loyalty. Family isn't just who you're born to. It's who stands by you, who protects you instead of preys on you. Sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is face the truth about someone you love. Dorothy warned me about Trevor 5 years before she passed away. She saw what he was. I didn't listen. I chose peace over protection, chose avoiding conflict over keeping my daughter safe from a predator. And the price was everything Dorothy had. Her life, her future, all the years we should have had together. That's the guilt I carry. That's the lesson I learned too late. But I also learned about forgiveness. Not the kind that forgets. Not the kind that pretends the past didn't happen. The kind that remembers every bit of pain but chooses to move forward anyway. For Dorothy. For my granddaughter. For the future. Because if I hold on to hatred, that means Dorothy passed away for nothing. And I refuse to let that be her legacy. If you think justice was served, tell me in the comments. Would you have taken in your granddaughter? Would you have welcomed your daughter back after 15 years? Let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever felt like you couldn't trust your own family, I see you. If you've ever been called crazy for knowing something was wrong, I believe you. Trust your instincts. Find help. Find evidence. Get out. You're not alone. You're not crazy. You're a survivor. Share this story. Someone out there needs to hear it. That evening, I sat on the porch watching the sunset. Dorothy, my granddaughter, 15, now sat beside me. I held a photo of Dorothy, my wife. Grandpa, do you think Grandma would be proud of you? I hope so, sweetheart. I hope so. I still visit Dorothy's grave every Sunday. I bring fresh white roses. And now I bring my granddaughter, the child named after her, the child who carries her spirit. We tell her stories. We keep her memory alive, because that's what love does. It endures, even when everything else falls apart. Even when the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you most. Love endures, and somehow against all odds, so do we. Looking back on this family story, I see how badly I failed Dorothy. She warned me about Trevor 5 years before everything collapsed. She saw the danger, but I dismissed her because I wanted peace more than truth. Don't be like me. Don't ignore the warnings. This family story taught me that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. The people closest to you can be the ones who hurt you most. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. Don't wait until it's too late. My dad revenge wasn't about hatred. It was about justice for Dorothy. That recording device, that confrontation, that trial, those were my ways of honoring her memory. Dad revenge came through the legal system, not violence. Through truth, not silence. But the real dad revenge, it's raising Dorothy's granddaughter with love. It's teaching her about the grandmother she never knew. It's breaking the cycle that destroyed our family story. God gave me a second chance at fatherhood when I thought my life was over. That baby wasn't just Stephanie's daughter, she was Dorothy's legacy. A chance for redemption. The lesson: listen to people who love you. Protect the vulnerable. Speak up when something feels wrong. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward despite the pain. Thank you for joining me on this journey. What would you do if you were torn between your daughter and the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd genuinely love to hear your perspective. If this resonated with you, subscribe so you don't miss future stories. Quick note. While rooted in real themes about family betrayal, some details have been dramatized for narrative impact. If this isn't your style, feel free to explore other content that suits you better.